Dragon Ball Xenoverse 3 is finally real, and this is one of those announcements that immediately sends the entire Dragon Ball gaming community into overdrive. After years of speculation, constant rumors, and endless leaks that came and went without anything concrete, Bandai Namco has officially stepped forward with a full reveal, confirming that Xenoverse 3 is in development for PlayStation 5 and built as the next major evolution of the series. And right away, the biggest takeaway is simple. This is not just another incremental sequel. This is a full reset of what Xenoverse means moving forward. For years, Xenoverse 2 has basically refused to die in the best way possible. It has been supported across multiple console generations, stacked with DLC, expansions, balance updates, and new transformations that kept players coming back long after most games would have been replaced. But at a certain point, you can only stretch the foundation so far before you have to rebuild it entirely. Xenoverse 3 looks like that rebuild moment, and everything shown so far suggests the developers are aiming to take the core identity of the series and push it into a modern PS5 level experience without being held back by last gen limitations. One of the biggest changes being talked about is the shift in setting. Instead of constantly revisiting Dragon Ball history through time patrol missions, Xenoverse 3 moves into a new era, often referred to as a far future timeline of the Dragon Ball universe. This immediately changes the tone of everything. Rather than just correcting distortions in history or reliving familiar arcs from Z and Super, players are stepping into a world that is actively evolving beyond what we already know. That opens the door for original villains, new transformations, new factions, and storylines that aren't just retellings of what we've already seen a dozen times before. The hub world also looks like a massive leap forward. Instead of the relatively contained hubs from previous games, Xenoverse 3 is expected to feature a much larger, more living environment built around a fully realized city structure. Think of something closer to a dynamic social space where players can actually feel like they're part of a living Dragon Ball world instead of just queuing menus and teleporting between missions. That alone is a huge step forward for immersion, especially for a franchise that thrives on character interaction and world presence. Combat is another area where expectations are extremely high. Xenoverse has always had a very specific style of arena-based 3D fighting that blends RPG progression with fast-paced aerial combat, but has also always had rough edges in terms of responsiveness and balance. Xenoverse 3 is expected to refine that formula significantly, tightening movement, improving hit detection, and making transformations feel more impactful both visually and mechanically. If they get this right, it could finally feel like the version of Xenoverse combat that fans have been imagining since the beginning. Character creation is also expected to take a major step forward. One of the defining features of Xenoverse has always been the ability to create your own fighter and insert yourself into the Dragon Ball universe, but over time that system has become somewhat limited by aging customization options. Xenoverse 3 looks like it's aiming to expand that dramatically with more races, deeper visual customization, and potentially more meaningful differences between builds rather than just stat variations. If done properly, this could push player identity in the game to a completely new level. Story-wise, the shift into a new era also means Bandai Namco has a chance to break away from the familiar structure of fix history, fight familiar boss, repeat. Instead, Xenoverse 3 has the opportunity to create its own identity within Dragon Ball canon, building original conflicts that still respect the source material but aren't restricted by it. That is a massive opportunity, and honestly, one of the most exciting parts of this entire reveal is the potential for storytelling freedom. Of course, with all of this hype comes the big question. Can Xenoverse 3 actually live up to nearly a decade of expectations built on Xenoverse 2's long life cycle? That is going to be the real test, because it's one thing to announce a sequel, and it's another thing entirely to justify why it needed to exist after such a long-running predecessor. Fans aren't just looking for more content, they're looking for evolution. They want smoother combat, deeper systems, a more engaging world, and a reason to invest hundreds of hours all over again. And that's where PS5 development becomes so important. This isn't a cross-generation compromise situation. This is a game being built with modern hardware in mind, which means more stable performance, better visual fidelity, larger environments, and fewer technical limitations holding the design back. If Xenoverse 3 fully takes advantage of that, it could finally deliver the kind of Dragon Ball experience fans have been asking for since the series first went 3D. At the end of the day, Xenoverse 3 represents both a continuation and a reset. It carries forward one of the most successful Dragon Ball game formulas ever created, but it also has the chance to redefine it entirely for a new generation of players. Whether it succeeds or not will come down to execution, but the ambition alone is enough to make this one of the most important Dragon Ball gaming announcements in years. If you enjoyed this breakdown and you're as hyped for Xenoverse 3 as the rest of the community seems to be, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. I cover gaming news, retrospectives, and deep dives just like this all the time, and there's a lot more on the way. Also, if you want extra content, I've got a Patreon where my latest exclusive video takes a deep dive into whether or not modern open world games still feel fresh in 2026 and whether the genre is evolving or starting to wear thin. The link is in the description if you want to check that out and support the channel directly. And as always, game on.